but similarly, he is a product of our culture. He's a product of this, again, system. Yeah. So, like, you know, there is one form of analysis that says, you know, there are meteorological disasters that are detached from reality. And of course, meteorology is its own fucking thing. And individual free will, you know, there are some neurologists, I'm sure you know, say that doesn't even fucking exist.
Right,
that our inner nature, our inner meteorology, the biochemistry of our system is governing everything. But certainly there are connections between each of us that create the way that we behave. You know, if I have an experience in here where I walk out feeling intimidated, maybe I'll be less kind to the people I work with. That's a less extreme example of a brutal murders, and the more obvious examples.
But we're aware of it. We're aware of it, which is one of the reasons why altruistic behavior, kind behavior, loving community, all these things are rewarded, because we do understand that those do enforce a better way of people behaving, and that real determinism, like people, like if you really truly don't have free will, well, we know that we would like people to behave kinder, because whatever factors that play into people going out and behaving in a nicer, kinder way, they're a part of that. That we know that that's the fuel of that.
So isn't then the role of us as individuals finding our own Conor McGregor, our own greatness, our own heroism, to create as much as possible a space for that altruism, a space for that philanthropy, a space for that togetherness, to create those moments, like you said, with that hurricane, and like we've all experienced it. I know when I do something nice for other people, I start to feel like, oh, this is who I'm meant to be, this is what I'm meant to be doing. But I, in my own personal life, get sidetracked by, oh, fuck, I've got these economic imperatives, I want to fucking feel great about myself because of other people's applause or, you know, verification. Because we are all flawed, because we are continually going to battle between the monkey in us, the primal little creature in us, and the great angel within us. What if we have an agreement on a social level that what we're aiming towards is the most benevolent, the most beautiful, and on an individual level we try and do it, and communally we encourage each other towards it, knowing that we're going to fuck up and fail all the time, but that we're heading in that direction together, instead of what we have, which is a system that's about make as much fucking money as you can and get out, you're only here for 100 years, line up the blowjobs. That is the system that we have. That is capitalist consumerism. That's what it's based on. This is a machine. The machine makes money. It's got to have infinite expansion, infinite growth. That is the system. I'm not saying that it's
a very fatalistic way of looking at it.
I don't look at it as fatalistic, because I think we can change the world,
Joe. But you are doing it, and you're not living that way. So the system that you're talking about, it's escapable. You've escaped it.
Yes, and we must.
And we're talking about it. And there's no like Willy Wonka golden ticket that's going to get you out of the system.
I don't trust fucking Willy Wonka as far as I can throw him. Who are those fucking Oompa Loompas? Where'd he get them? I don't think they should even be working there.
What's in the chocolate?
What's in that chocolate? That poor boy drowning in there.
Why is Johnny Depp behaving like a young girl?
Why is Johnny Depp behaving like a young girl?
What's going on in that fucking movie, man? What's his weird way of talking?
A lot of questions. I think it was about Michael Jackson. I think he was like,
okay, come to my chocolate factory.
Right.
Everything's beautiful.
Yeah,
it's
he's doing a
beautiful.
Peter Pan type deal.
Exactly. I don't want to grow up.
Yeah.
Come here, you.
I think you to go back to it. There he is.
It's beautiful. It's beautiful.
Hi.
Chocolate factory.
Hey, Johnny, look at my wand.
I think this fatalistic thing that it's just designed to. I don't think it's designed to do anything. I just think it is. It is.
I sort of even agree with that. I think that what we live in is the manifestation of our most primal desires. Greed, or not even necessarily greed, survival. And I think that if you extrapolate on that system, you end up with what we've got. But I think an alternative way of being, something that might be a corrective path for us, is to look at the feelings that you describe of the altruism in that hurricane, the feeling of greatness in an individual, and the way an individual can pull communities together. It's sort of like it's not a binary choice. I know the world's more complicated than that, Joe, but like I suppose my quest, and indeed, fuck me, my book, is about how I individually have got my head and I wrench myself away from selfishness and greed and pride on a daily basis and pull myself towards altruism and love and self-betterment, a part of it. Keep myself fit mentally, spiritually, so I can be a better part of this system, and perhaps through my self-improvement create better systems, because there is all this energy, there's all this power, and I think it's a shame that it gets siphoned in a particular direction.
Right. Well, that feeling you express, and as you express it and express it honestly, that resonates with people. And I think what we're talking about is the 49.9% and 50.1%. Rick Strassman was describing. It is this constant battle, and it is not an easy path.
I don't think the system operates at the 50-49 level. I think the system's way towards the negative.
The system,
Like a cultural system. The economic
the
system.
of human beings in this world,
Say capitalism.
country, or where?
Let's say I don't know enough about what goes down in China, so I'll say like sort of global capitalism, say. And again, I'm not a fucking economist. I'm just picking up shit from listening to your podcast and other podcasts. You know what I mean? That's where I'm getting educated. I've luckily turned up at university lately. I'm tripping down that fucking coffee, man.
Man,
Like
crazy
it's
shit,
going
right?
deep. I gotta have a. Can I go to the toilet?
Yes,
Maybe
go
even do a
ahead.
poo? How long have I been in
Go
here?
ahead.
Do you feel like I've done enough about my
Yeah.
book?
We've done 2 hours and 20 minutes. We could wrap this
You've
up.
fucking got a clock there. You've got all these advantages. There's Buddhas in every direction
Yeah.
and only one clock. I didn't know what the time
There's
is.
a clock there. There's a clock there. There's a clock.
Yeah, but they're all
over there.
facing you, Rogan.
Yeah.
The
Well,
clocks are all
do I
facing
need-
your
I don't want
direction.
anybody who's a guest to think about time.
This is, do you know what? This
I
is
want
the
you to
fucking
tune in.
system.
I do
I've been
this shit
pulled
every
into
day.
this system. Yeah, I'm just some Johnny-come-lately kid from England with a dream. With a dream, I come over here into the lair.
A dream to sell books.
I'm just a kid who wants
Hey
to.
man, fuck the system, but buy my book.
You're out of order. You're out of order to point out that obvious hypocrisy. How dare you point out that obvious hypocrisy? Can I do a wee?
Go ahead.
Hold on a minute. I don't want to end from that. No, yeah.
Yeah, you're good.
Oh, I'm
Don't
bust-
worry about it, man. You're good. Take a leak. We'll open that door and the first door on the right. Nah, man, it's beautiful. Don't worry about it. No. You're good, man. Don't worry. You're good. Told you that caveman coffee was gonna get him. Well, you were gonna pull something up about Nas, I think. You were looking.
I had some. I didn't know if you knew he was a venture capitalist. He has been for a
what does
long-
that mean? Like, I know he opens up restaurants. He's opened up that sweet chick place.
Potentially, if his company sells soon, I don't know how that happens or if he becomes public. He could be what they're saying is hip hop's first true billionaire.
Oh shit, Nas!
So his net worth, it says, is only like if that celebrity net worth is like 17 million, but that doesn't include all the companies he owns. Has been investing in for like a long time. Like,
No, I
think he
didn't know
owns
about
Uber.
that. I knew about his restaurant because I'm friends with Everlast, and Everlast goes to that sweet chick. I think Everlast has a piece of that too. I don't know, maybe he doesn't. But he took me to it in New York and took me to it in L.A. once. We went there, but they were playing music that was so loud, it's literally hurting my ears. Nas is like half man, half venture capitalist. Look at that beautiful suit he's got on. He's got a pocket square and like a little small chain. Have you ever seen the small chain?
I don't know. No, what's the? I don't.
Interesting. Yeah, there's a lot of those motherfuckers make a shit ton of money. Smart. Why not? You know? I mean, it shows you that they can figure out a way through just their art to get to this weird position where, I mean, if Nas really does make $1 billion, like, fuck. Still makes amazing music, though. That's my point. My point is that his music never went commercial. His music's fucking fantastic.
Someone was saying, I was reading some stuff that he supposedly tried. Remember, he had a rap battle, beef. He had a couple beefs
With
publicly
Jay-Z?
with like Puff Daddy, the "Hate Me Now" thing.
Oh,
and
yeah?
That he also ghost wrote for Will Smith. I don't know if that really means he's sold out, but
That's not selling out.
Yeah.
That's just writing for a friend. But the rap battles, I think, is more just ego thing. Someone talks shit about him, he talks shit about them. You know? You all right, brother? You all right?
Yeah,
You got a copy of your book. You're not fucking around. You brought a copy back now. You want to show everybody? Here, give it to me. I'll hold it up so you don't feel bad. I'll be like Vanna White.
Joe Rogan. I'm on the Joe Rogan
Recovery.
experience.
Freedom from our addictions. Russell Brand, ladies and gentlemen. Let's wrap this thing up. What are you talking
I mean, that
about?
was 2 hours and 20 minutes.
Fuck yeah. It's good. It's beautiful. You kicked it into the fucking orbit.
I did
It's
change
beautiful.
the bit that I wrote about you, as a matter of fact,
You wrote,
because
I didn't know you wrote about me in there.
now you're fucking interested.
No, man, I'm feeling good.
Like,
Excited.
it was slightly because what it was, I realised I asked them to put in the word seemingly because I thought that I'd been too reductive about you, and you know me. Like this is about like I'm having this experience like where I'm sort of like this is part of the book is about trying to explain how in the addict's mind you're trapped in this constant cyclone of self-obsessive thought, and the outside world seems somehow sort of distant you and you can't connect to it, right? So as well as explain how to go through the steps, I talk through like this is what it's like to be in my fucking head. So I'm like, this is me out of my dog, and my dog causes all these problems all the time, and I run into these people. And I say, all I know, like, you know, and I run into them and I don't want to go and talk to them because I feel sort of self-conscious because they look kind of like cool. I think, oh no, I've got to go over there and talk to these people. I'm going to feel inadequate. All I know is how I feel, and that's all I'll ever know unless I can learn a new system for being. Bill, this guy, comes over and says hello while I stand now on the goose shit. We're on this sort of riverbank, vaguely embarrassed by Bear, my dog. Bear's looping enthusiasm. I heard you on Joe Rogan, he says. Joe Rogan, a former mixed martial artist, commentator, comedian and host of the world's most downloaded podcast, is himself an interesting example of new emerging models of masculinity, a fusion of right-wing individualism and new age tolerance, a fierce autodidact. He has become a champion of American libertarianism and is to me fascinating because he's clever and a good fighter. There you go. There's me mentioning you in passing. Now, when I rewrote it, I said you better put in seemingly because I think I've been reductive there, saying right-wing individualism and new age. But what do you think about that, Joe? There you are.
I don't know how much right-wing I have in me. I'm more libertarian than anything.
Libertarian, yeah.
But
Well,
the right-wing stuff is probably, if you talk to them.
Coding your own games is easier than you think. You know, you should take this online Unity course on Udemy. It's taught by a software engineer and a game developer who are both expert instructors. You'll learn C#, object-oriented programming, functions and variables, basically everything you need to know to make games, and all for the price of takeout. The course is yours to keep and take at any time. And if it doesn't work out, you can get your money back in 30 days. I can't wait to see what you make with this. Get started now with this special discount.
libertarian. Yeah,
But
well,
the right-wing stuff is probably, if you talk to a real right-winger, they'd go, what the fuck are you talking about?
yeah, I think you're right. I mean, I think like libertarianism would have sort of covered it better, but this was written at a point where I hadn't listened to as much stuff, so I've changed it.
Listen, man, you can come on here anytime you want. I love talking to you.
We
You're
have
awesome.
do you think so?
We have a great time.
We do have a great time, don't we? I'm looking
do.
forward to coming back to your new studio that sounds like your own version of a Willy Wonka
it's
podcast land.
Gonna be crazy.
The thing is, you know, like, this is why I don't take drugs, is because I've drunk quite a lot of caffeine there and I'm sort of slightly
Unhinged.
scared of going back to, like, my normal life, you know,
Yeah.
like parachuting back into that. But I've got
you're
fucking,
flying
I've got a
high right
baby.
now.
Yeah.
Woo!
Well, done a lot of
Russell
work.
Brand, ladies and gentlemen.
Joe Rogan,
Go
thank
buy the
you.
book. Download your podcast. What is it
Oh
called?
yeah, Under the Skin with Russell Brand.
Under the Skin with Russell Brand. Goodbye, everybody.
Let me at 'em. Bring it on. Bring it on. Surprise! I'm back. Let me at 'em.
You chose a side. It failed you.
Ready for battle. battle.
You steal from us.
We steal from
Ready
you.
for battle. Who's next?
I went through a lot of guitars and then we got signed and I found a Mustang. When I got that guitar and wrote most of the first album on it, where they've become my absolute guitar of choice. I need to record that one myself.
Three, two, one. Yes. Are we live? Not yet. Pause. Hold.
Let me at 'em.
YouTube. Some sort of a struggle. Yeah, we're live. Okay. How are you? You're a Wheeler Walker Jr. fan, I see.
Maybe I will be.
You will. You never heard of him before?
Ready.
I haven't. I confess.
That's okay. So first of all, thank you. Thanks for doing this. Appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem.
What is it like? I mean, I guess this is the best way to get this started. What is it like being a person that grew up in the Westboro Baptist Church? For a person on the outside, for me, when I think of that, I think of like this crazy, hateful, angry environment filled with like really mean people that say horrible things about gay people and all sorts of other folks. But I meet you and you're super nice. You seem so normal.
That is the conundrum. So, a lot of the things, the words that you just used to describe the church, that's definitely not how I experienced it growing up, for the most part. I mean, my family, outside of when they're not on the picket line, they're, I mean, incredibly kind and gentle and compassionate. And I think the biggest misconception about the church is that they're motivated by hatred. And in their eyes, it's the definition of loving. We thought what we were doing was loving our neighbor. So, in the first time that phrase appears in the Bible, it's in the context of when you see your neighbor sinning, you have to rebuke him, not just like watch him wander off on this way to hell. So that was how we saw it. We thought we were warning people and giving them the only hopeful message that could save them from eternity in hell.
Was there ever any dissent amongst the people that were in the church about like how the message is being distributed? Like if you're holding up a sign that says God hates fags and a gay guy was being buried at a funeral and you guys were there protesting with those signs. Like was there ever anyone inside the organization that was like, hey, this is not the way to do it. These people are suffering and mourning.
Not really. I mean, once my grandfather, he was the one who kind of developed that strategy. He thought, so, you know, the examples are for funerals. If they're burying somebody, so a soldier, say, or a gay person, it's an example of the curses of God. So God says, if you obey me, I'll bless you, and if you disobey me, I'll curse you. So
why soldiers?
So several times in the scriptures, it's this connection between the sins of the nation and the punishments. So for instance, in the book of Judges, it says, they chose new gods, then was war in their gates. And then in the books of the Kings, it says there fell down many slain because the war was of God. And then in the book of Hosea, it says, they have deeply corrupted themselves. Therefore, I will remember their iniquity, and I will visit their sins. Though they bring up their children, yet will I bereave them. There shall not be a man left. So it's these threatenings, these warnings from God that if you disobey me, I'm going to curse you. So we would go to these soldiers' funerals, to warn the living, to say that if you don't want to be likewise punished, you have to repent. You have to change your ways and obey God.
Now, people that are also hardcore Christians, that also follow the word of God very closely, but still would see like what you guys were doing at these funerals, holding up these signs, protesting where a soldier who supposedly gave his life for our freedom, right? Supposedly they're over there fighting so that we could be safe here, and then yeah, you guys are out there with these signs. Like, there had to be a lot of people that have like-minded views in Christianity, but still were furious at people.
Yeah, absolutely. And from our perspective, we thought that they were substituting their righteousness for the righteousness of God. So they were upset that we were out there giving this message that was 100% biblical from our point of view. And God calls that compassion when he sends his servants with his message. So we thought, even though they call themselves Christians, they're ignoring these vast swaths of the Bible that support what we were saying and how we were saying it. So, I mean, there was definitely a lot of pushback from people on all sides, and especially from other Christians. But we just thought, they're not really Christian because they're not calling us like we understand it.
So you guys were pretty much solidified in your opinion. It was a consensus. It was like everybody thought you were doing the right thing.
Right. So, I mean, when the soldiers' funerals, when those protesting, it was in June of 2005 that we started protesting soldiers' funerals.
And how was it brought up?
So my grandfather had been, so it's 2005, so the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan, you see these things on the news, and he was, the funerals, like what was going on at the funerals. And so these aren't funerals, these are patriotic pep rallies, and they're saying all these things about God bless America. Well, God isn't blessing America. God is cursing America. So we have to go and give a different message. So that's how it came up initially. So I went to my first soldiers' funeral protest the following month in July of 2005. And before I went, every time we would go to these, I was protesting from the time I was 5 years old. So when you go out on to these protests, a lot of times there would be media there, people asking questions. And I wasn't sure how I would answer it. If somebody asked me, why are you at this funeral? I wasn't sure how I would answer it. So I felt when I found out I was going, I thought I need to understand this. So I went to my mother, and she brings forth those verses that I just quoted to you and several others. We sat down as a family, as we did every night, to read the Bible and to talk about world events and the church's interpretation of these events in light of their understanding of the scriptures. So, she goes through and explains this, very carefully, and because her answers came from the Bible, that was my foundation, was that the Bible is the infallible word of God, and that it's true no matter what any human thinks, and that we have a duty to obey it 100% no matter what I think or feel otherwise. I have to bring my thoughts and opinions in line with this. So even though I had a lot of trepidation at the beginning about going to those funerals, I very quickly acclimated to it, as you do when in an environment like that where everything depends on you falling into line.
Now, what was it like when you first did it? Like, what was the reaction to other people? Or, other people's reaction to you?
Mm-hmm. So that very first one, it was in Omaha, Nebraska, and it was incredibly tense. So there was a bunch of cops. We always, every time we would go to protest somewhere, we would contact the police to make sure that there would be a police presence.
Why?
Because people were tempted to, and did, would come after us physically, try to assault us. And again, it happened with some regularity. So from the very earliest days of the protesting, we, my mom and her generation had made this decision many of them are lawyers, so they would, write letters from, as attorneys saying, we're going to be coming, we're going to be protesting in your city. This is what we do. We hold signs on public sidewalks. We are not violent. So explaining what our protest looked like, and then saying if you want to avoid, these kind of violence that often happens, be there.
So this first one, how old were you in 2005?
I was 19.
So you were a kid, but a grown kid,
Mm-hmm.
and you're with your parents, and this is the first time you're protesting a veteran.
Mm-hmm.
What was that experience like?
So I'm standing we're standing across the street from the church. Like I said, it was very solemn, very quiet. Which was not normal really for protests. A lot of times we would be out there, singing and chanting and making, it was a big public display. But this was, like I said, incredibly tense. Nobody was really talking. Nobody was really moving. And the family was, pulled up in I think it was in a limousine across the street. And the family got out and looked around and saw us. And
Did they know you guys were going to be there beforehand?
because we always would publicize that, we would send out news releases. So they were aware that we were going to be there. And there were a bunch of, I think they were Marines, like in dress blues, standing there, and they looked incredibly angry and upset. But like I said, it was like, it felt like at any moment if something happened, that the whole situation could explode. But again, like, so the cops, having the cops standing there. So it was pretty, it was really tense.
What kind of things are they saying to you?
They weren't saying anything. Like none of this, which is like what I was trying to say. It's really unusual for protests like that. A lot of times we would be exchanging. You know, we would of course be yelling about Bible verses and the hatred of God, and you know, they would be talking about love and tolerance and how we're wrong and not Christian. But at this one, it was very quiet. It wasn't always like this. So pretty quickly, you know, once we became acclimated to those protests, and also have you heard of the Patriot Guard Riders? It was a group of motorcyclists who decided to, and they formed like across the country. So in every state there was a group of these motorcyclists who, when they found out we were going to be protesting somewhere, they would go and, you know, rev their engines so that our words and songs and such wouldn't be heard by the family, and they would, you know, hold American flags and try to block. You know, it's putting a buffer between us and the family. And so when that started to happen, it became almost like a game sometimes. And in hindsight, this makes me cringe. But it became like this game of trying to like show that we were going to get our message across, no matter what any human being wanted, because we knew, we were so sure that this was what God wanted.
Wow. What made you leave?
A lot of things. It started, my very first sort of conscious doubts came from conversations on Twitter. So
wow.
Yeah.
Something good got done through Twitter?
Yeah, lots of good things. I also met my husband there.
Oh, there you go.
While I was still at the church.
Oh.
Kind of nice.
Is he an atheist?
I don't know that he would use that word to describe himself. Actually, I was just talking to Sam about this, and I was like, the problem with the word is when you say atheist, people think jerk. And like,
really?
So many people do. So many people think that it's like, oh, you're
Jerk.
absolutely certain that there is no God, and so it's a word that I hesitate to use to describe myself too. But I'm not a believer. I don't even like to say I'm not a believer, because I love people. I believe in people, and that there is so much hope and for people, and that we can. I don't know. Anyway,
so conversations that you had on Twitter did what to you? Like, what doors did they open in your mind?
Right. So I got on Twitter, and it was like an extension of the picket line, right? So we would go out there with these picket signs, and you know, people would come up to us and ask us questions, and so it was a constant conversation. And so I got on Twitter to take that, you know, to the internet to reach more people. And so one of the first things I did when I got on Twitter was to attack this Jewish man named David Abitbol, who ran a blog called Jewlicious. He was listed as the second most influential Jew on Twitter on this.
Who's number one?
I actually can't remember. Not memorable, not part of my story, I guess. But you can check it. It's the JTA's list if you want to.
Okay.
But anyway, so he was listed as number 2, and so he responded initially with you know, sarcasm and hostility. But pretty quickly he sort of changed tactics and started, instead of like mocking me, although he still did do that some too, he was asking questions about our picket signs. And I started asking him questions about Jewish theology, because I wanted to better know how to counter it, you know, from the scriptures. I was sure that they were wrong. Jews killed Jesus and reject him as the Messiah, and so all of these things. Right, so we're having this back and forth, and this goes on for about a year. And during that year, I actually met him twice. I protested him twice. Once
So you went to his functions, or was he giving speeches? Like,
yeah.
where was he?
So in Long Beach, actually, at the Jewlicious Festival, they had this Jewish cultural festival.
What a great name.
Yeah, it's great. He's great. So he was going to be there, and you know, I went and I was protesting him. And he came out to the picket line, and it was one of those like very rowdy pickets. There was a bunch of counter protesters, like, and it was I don't know, guys dressed as like the Easter Bunny and Jesus, and you know, it was actually got pretty violent. So I was actually
It
super.
got violent.
Well, yeah, and the cops. This where I told you we called the cops. Like the cops were just standing there watching people like actively assaulting us, like hitting us, and so we're like walking around trying to, you know, to not be hit because we're not going to hit back. We weren't. Like I said, the church is very against violence. Like they're not going to be violent to people or defend themselves. Just to. So I was actually really glad when David came out because he became like a buffer between me and the rest of the counter protesters because everybody could tell that he was wearing his Jewish shirt and whatever. Anyway, so the conversation continued there, and then also at another protest 6 or 7 months later. And then not long after that second protest, we're talking again, and he was asking about one of our signs that said "death penalty for fags," and you know, of course, I'm reiterating why the church believes that. Because in the book of Leviticus, God calls for the death penalty for gays, and then in Romans 1 in the New Testament, it's reiterated to say that commit such things are worthy of death. So, so I'm telling David these things, and he says, like, yeah, but didn't Jesus say, "Let he who is without sin cast the first stone"? And I said, well, we always said to that, which was, we're not casting stones, we're preaching words. And he said, yeah, but you're advocating that the government cast stones. And I remember, you know, this is all through Twitter. And so I see this message and I kind of gasped and I was like, I had never connected that Jesus there, of course he was talking about the death penalty, specifically about the death penalty, and we were advocating it. And so I wasn't sure how to respond, but David kept going. He said, and what about this member of your church who had a child out of wedlock? And I said, what about it? Like, this is another point, you know, people, is you know, common knowledge. People knew about this and would throw this in our face. And we would say, the standard of God isn't sinlessness, it's repentance. So she doesn't deserve that punishment because she repented. She stopped, you know, she wasn't having premarital sex anymore, and she knows that it's wrong, and she changed her mind, and she changed her conduct, which is what repentance is. And he said, yeah, but she would have been killed if you had instituted the death penalty for that sin. And it was the first time again that I connected that if you kill somebody, as soon as they sin, you lose the opportunity to repent and be forgiven. And so, again, I'm just sort of staring at my phone, and you know, in Topeka, Kansas, he's in Jerusalem. And I really quickly ended the conversation. I don't even remember quite how. But it was just sort of this, like, I didn't know how to handle this because, like I said, the church is full of lawyers. They're very intelligent, and their arguments and their theology, for the most part, is very well constructed and super consistent. And so for there to be this, you know, this hypocrisy, this contradiction, my brain felt like I was exploding. So I went to a couple people in the church, including my mother, and the response was, feel free to stop me at any time, by the way, I feel like I'm filibustering here. So she reiterated the same verses that I had told David that supported our position, but she didn't address the contradiction. And when I seemed unsatisfied with it, she said I was getting wrapped around an axle and just sort of, you know, push it aside. And the response was so just to shut me down and then to move on to the next thing, which is it's a very human thing, right? When somebody puts something in your face that is this contradiction that you're not ready to deal with, or that you can't, if you know what I mean? You compartmentalize, you kind of sort of push it aside and try not to. So the way that I dealt with it was to stop holding the sign, because I knew that if somebody asked me about it, I couldn't defend it because I didn't believe it. But there was nothing else I could do at that point. But the importance of that conversation, this is obviously just one small contradiction, one small inconsistency in a vast, you know, I still believe that everybody outside the church was basically just completely wrong and evil and or delusional. And that the church was basically right, except this one point.
Did anybody ever feel that it was bad to use slurs? Like to use some sort of insulting term for gay people instead of saying God hates gay people?
So at the very beginning, they did use the word gays.
Why did they change it?
Well, so my grandfather would say that gay is a misnomer. These people aren't happy. They're committing suicide, and they're evil and abominable, and they have no peace. God has taken their peace. They're not happy. So gay is a misnomer. And so the word the word fag, they say, like Amos, in the book of Amos, there's it's translated firebrand there. So my grandfather would say, the word fag is an elegant metaphor. And it's, gays, fags are a bundle of sticks, right? Used for kindling. So gays they burn in their lust, one toward another. And they fuel the fires of hell and the fires of God's wrath. So it's an elegant metaphor, Gramps would say.
Do you know what the original metaphor was really supposed to be?
You mean from the Bible?
No, the word faggot.
Oh, no, actually.
Faggot means a bundle of wood, and they would use that expression to describe a woman because a bundle of wood is burdensome. Like carrying around a bundle of wood is very burdensome. So when they would call a woman a faggot, they were saying that she was burdensome. So when they would call a man a faggot, they would say that he is burdensome like a woman, like a bundle of wood, like a non-manly man that can't get work done, along those lines.
Right.
And then it became used by people erroneously saying that it was about burning them and that they would burn gay people because they would burn faggots of wood. That's not really the case. Just sounds cool.
Yeah, I actually had never heard that before.
Yeah. If you see if you can find that, Jamie. Google that. The original term faggot meant bundle of wood and burdensome like a bundle of wood. Because think about like carrying a bundle of wood, especially if you didn't have a truck. It's a huge pain in the ass. That's kind of what the source of it was.
Wow. Yeah, no, I had no.
Yeah, people use it wrong, and the real problem is the people that use it wrong are like gay activists, and they try to say how horrible that word is because it was used to represent how gay people were burned. But there's never been like a time in history where like there's a whole series of gay people that were like burnt. It's just like they drowned witches and things were done like real specifically, but it's never been like a thing. What do we got here? The word faggot has been used in English since the late 16th century as an abusive term for women, particularly old women. A reference to homosexuality may derive from this. Why does it have to be so weird the way you got it? Oh, okay. Yeah, I can read it like that. Blah, blah, blah. So there it is. An alternative possibility is that the word connected with the practice of fagging in British private schools in which younger boys performed potentially sexual duties for older boys, although the word faggot was never used in this context. But the big one means the bundle of wood. The bundle of sticks. What's that, Jamie? What do you got?
Something awkward to be carried is right.
Yes, exactly. Burdensome. So that's where it comes from. It really didn't have anything to do with burning people. But like they'll repeat it like to make a big point, like a big dramatic point. But it's melodramatic.
You would think I would know this, given our respective histories, but I literally have never heard this in my life.
Yeah, it's an important distinction for why people use that term, because it's really just that they're annoying. It's really just, they just think of some non-manly man who can't get things done, and he's probably crying all the time, and he's burdened.
My experience with gay people history is obviously much more maybe reflective of reality. Has not been that.
What has it been like?
Impossibly wonderful.
Don't overcompensate because you're getting out of this bad environment. I'll take you down to Santa Monica Boulevard to some of the gayest spots on earth. You'll see dudes with cut-off shorts, and you'll change your tune. You're like, what are they doing?
Well, I'm not trying to paint everybody with the one brush now either, but
It's been amazing. As soon as they start being attracted to men, something happens.
No,
They become different.
that's not what I mean. They're just people, right?
Yes,
It's just other
sure.
people. So, right after we left, at first I thought we have to hide from the past forever. My sister and I should say, left together.
How old were you guys?
So I was 26, I was almost 27.
Did you have a long conversation before you did it?
Many.
Many.
It was about 4 months between when I first talked to her about leaving.
So what was the first initial conversation, and how did you gather up the courage to even sort of breach the subject?
It was really terrifying and awful because, I remember from the time I was very young, there's this passage in Deuteronomy that my mom would quote, and it's about, if somebody, if your, friend, somebody close to you, your relative, somebody comes up to you and says, let us go and serve other gods, like somebody secretly says to you, those things. you have to stone them. And you, the one that they came to, you're supposed to be the first one to, and my family's not stoning people.
What would they do though if it said it in the Bible and someone said, "Hey, we have to serve this golden cow"?
So we also have in the New Testament it talks about rendering unto Caesar the things that are Caesar's and to God the things that are God's. So we also have to obey the law of man. We have to obey the law of, we're not supposed to be just. So
But the law of man supersedes the law of God?
We're supposed to be obedient to the laws of men. But also, I mean, there's kind of a complicated, a little bit theology where it sort of undid a lot of the Mosaic code, that we didn't actually have to follow those things. But honestly, I don't know. I think it's I think it's like the death penalty for fags thing. So like, if they still believe that punishment is applicable, then we should be trying to convince the government, lobbying the government to, like with those signs.
Right.
So, it was, my sister, if I went to her and said these things to her, she could easily have turned around and told my parents, not as it's a culture of tattletales, not out of bad intention, but because they believe that they're trying to help you.
Right.
They don't want you to go down a bad path. So, when I first thought of leaving it was July 4th. And I was with my sister at the time, and when it first occurred to me that I might have to leave the church, or that the church might be wrong, I thought I had to leave like that second, because if it even occurred to me, that meant I didn't belong there, and that God was going to punish me, and that I just felt like just immediately so much guilt and like I was a betrayer.
But was all your social life connected still to the church?
Yeah.
And was this where, had you already known your husband by then?
I had, yeah.
So he corrupted you.
He was definitely part of it. But like, it wasn't like that. It's like the beginning, like, so he was just another person on Twitter at first. And it was like friendly conversation. And it's been over the course of several months. I don't know, 8 months or so, 7 or 8 months. And there was never anything, about feelings or, relationships or all that stuff is totally forbidden. No, nothing like that. Like, not even anything, like, nothing. Like, it's just that my mind didn't work that way. There can be no relationship like that with outsiders. But
Outsiders.
Wow. Yeah. So, I actually thought I was never going to get married, because most of the people in the church, about 80% or so of the people in the church, there's only 80 people or so anyway, were my immediate and extended family. So I thought, there's no way that I'm just not gonna get married.
So you just accepted that?
It wasn't like an easy thing at first, but it was just the facts on the ground,
So the facts on the ground were you had to date someone inside the church. There was only 80 people in the church. They're all your family. You can't date your family. Fuck.
Yeah.
Wow.
I mean, I should say there were a couple of people my age who, like, and they had just joined the church, like, that. But I had no interest in any of them. And
Slim pickings and not. Wow.
And but yeah, it was kind of strange. But I actually had a dream about meeting. So, and I should say also, my husband at the time, I didn't know he was totally anonymous on Twitter. Like, so it's just his words. I didn't know what he